Hey, what's happening? I'm sitting here in our 2018 Nautique GS20, and today, even though it's a pretty nice sunny fall day, the weather's getting pretty cool. It's mid-October, and it's time, unfortunately, to winterize this thing. We have some freezing temperatures coming next week, so I want to make sure I get it done ahead of that. And unfortunately, I know we're probably not going to get out on the water anymore this season. So I'm going to take you through how to winterize this. This has the 6-liter ZR4 motor. It is not a closed cooling system. It is an open cooling system, so it does pull in lake water for the cooling and pull that through the motor. Some of the newer boats have a closed cooling system, which is probably a lot easier to winterize. This boat also has a heater on it. So I'm going to be showing you how to clear out the heater lines as well as winterize the boat. I am going to be winterizing the motor itself, and I'm also going to be winterizing all 3 of my ballast tanks. Now let's go ahead and take a look at some of the stuff we're going to need to do this project.
Dad, what are you doing with my stuff?
Let's take a look at some of the stuff we're going to need today. This is RV antifreeze. You are going to need 12 gallons of this. So I use 6 gallons for the motor, and I use another 2 gallons each per ballast tank, and I have 3 ballast tanks on this boat. So I have 12 gallons of this. You are going to need a 5-gallon bucket. Now, I made this contraption, which is just some 1/2-inch PVC that comes up over and back down to a threaded 3/4 inch. And then a piece of garden hose that has threaded 3/4 inch to go there. And then the other end of the garden hose is just regular garden hose. And then at the end, I need 2 different kinds of adapters. This one will go to a 1-inch inside diameter, which is for the ballast tanks. And then I use this white adapter here to hook on this. And this ultimately, it's a lot of pieces, but turns into a 1 1/4 inch adapter. And that's going to be what I use to get the antifreeze pulled into the intake for the motor itself. So part of this, I'll have that white piece hooked here. Garden hose always hooks to that. So that's most of the stuff you're going to need to do this project. Now, before we get too far into anything, I have 2 storage compartments back here, and all season those are full of stuff. I've got knee boards in there, I've got tubes in there on this side. This side usually keeps a cooler and all of our life jackets. So the first thing I want to do is I want both of these compartments completely empty. So I'm going to clean out this storage compartment, and I'm also going to clean out this storage compartment. So let's go ahead and get those cleaned out. Now that you have both of these sides empty, the next thing we want to do is remove these panels. Okay, so there's a panel on each side of the motor. I have the engine compartment open here, panel on either side, and we want to take both of these out and just get them out of the way for now. Mine, if you can see, has a nut on the back side. There's just one on either, one front, one rear. And I'm not sure why on this boat, but this one happens to have wing nuts. So I'm going to need a nut driver to take the other ones off. But anyway, take both of these panels out and just get them out of your way. Something probably worth mentioning is this side that has the nut, take the nut off. Don't try and unscrew it with the Phillips from the compartment side. Come from the engine side and take the nut off. They're nylock nuts. Just be very, very careful so you don't drop them inside the engine compartment. I still have to do the one in the back there, but mine are 3/8 inch size, so I'm just using a nut driver to take those off. Once you take the panel out, go ahead and put the nut back. That way you don't lose those. Keep them with the panel. Now there's 7 drain plugs. Let's see, 7. There's 7 drain plugs. Now that we have the panels out, we have access to both sides of the motor. There's 7 drain plugs. And the first thing we're going to do is pull all 7 of those plugs and let any water that's in the motor now go ahead and drain out. So 7 drain plugs. The very first one I like to do is right here in this, underneath this hatch. And it's at the very front of the whole V-drive. I'm going to point down there and kind of show you where, but I don't even think I can get the camera to where the drain plug is. I'm going to have to kind of describe it. Okay, I'm looking down in through this panel. Now the first drain plug, you can see this is the front of your V-drive right here. Right underneath it, right here, I'm actually touching it with my finger. It's directly underneath, a little bit to the port side of the boat, slightly to the port side. You can feel it. It's the plastic kind of butterfly shaped. It's a blue plastic, basically giant wing nut that I'm going to unscrew. And you can unscrew it by hand. So I'm going to reach down in there and unscrew that thing and pull it out. To me, this is the easiest done by reaching in with my right hand. And I can feel that, and I'm going to unthread it. I can feel water already starting to trickle out as I unscrew it. And it's almost there. Try not to drop this in the bottom of the compartment. There, a bunch of water just ran out. And there's my plug right there. One of the things to immediately check every time you take one of these plugs out is this O-ring, because these can go bad over time. But make sure that the O-ring comes off with the plug. Also that it's not cracked or split or anything. This one's in pretty good shape. So I'm going to set this aside. That's the first plug. Okay, we got the first plug out of there. Now there's going to be 3 plugs on the starboard side, 3 plugs over on the port side. I'm going to start over on the starboard side, so we're going to go down into this side compartment. Okay, the first one's pretty easy to find. This is the front of the boat, so I'm pointing towards the bow, and you can see this part of the motor right here, and there's a sign here that says raw water drain, and there's a blue plug right there. So this one's really easy to find. So, and this one's pretty accessible. You can get to it pretty much with both hands. Again, these should all just be hand tight. If you need a wrench, it's a 3/4 inch size open-end wrench that you need. So we're going to take that one off, and we should get some more water out of here. There we go. Now I mentioned O-rings, and you notice the O-ring did not come off on this plug, and I can see it is still on that motor. So I'm going to try and get that O-ring off carefully. There it is. This O-ring still looks fine, but I want it to stay with the plug. So definitely pay attention to O-rings, okay? So I'm going to set that somewhere safe. And we're going to go down to our next one, which is actually, I don't know if you can see it down there, right down, that's right down there. You can see the blue plug, but to get to it, I got to come from up underneath, okay? So I'm going to come up from underneath. Let me see if I can get a better camera angle. Okay, this one's going to be easier for me to just show you, and then I'll take it off. But we got that one right there. Again, that's coming from the front of the boat. As I come down here, I'm going to see a sign that says raw water drain right there. It says raw water drain. And directly below that, there's a blue plug. Hopefully you can see it up under there. Right there. So right up under here is the blue plug. So I'm going to go ahead and just unscrew that one just like the others. This one is usually going to have the most water. These lower ones are going to have quite a bit of water that comes out. So there was a pretty good rush of water. Again, on the O-ring, you notice this one came off kind of near the tip. So I'm going to pull that O-ring all the way back down to the base of that drain plug. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and set this somewhere safe. Always try to not drop these into the engine compartment. They are a real pain in the butt to retrieve if you do. Don't ask me how I know. Okay, still on the starboard side, we've pulled this drain plug. We've pulled the one down below here. There's one more to pull on this side, and this one's really easy because if you find this blue hose, there's a drain plug on the end of it. Go ahead and just take that one off also, and you can pull this up out of the way to work on it. Okay, now we come over to the left side of the boat, the port side. And again, the first one's really easy to find. It's right here. This one has a challenge though, and if you look, I actually modified mine a bit. And the reason I modified mine is that there's this hose that hits right up against this spot, and it's just how the hoses are run for this particular motor. And the butterfly part of these drain plugs, it's very difficult to not only unscrew it, but to also screw it in. Like, you can push the hose out of the way, but it's kind of hard to hold the hose and screw it at the same time. So I actually cut the wings off of this particular drain plug. So I modified it. And as such, I use a wrench to tighten this one and to take it off. Okay, so it takes a little while to do this, but I'm gonna take my time. And again, this is a 3/4 inch wrench that I'm using, and I'm gonna just take a while. I won't make you watch the whole thing, but I'm gonna go ahead and get this drain plug out. Again, this one in particular, be really careful not to drop it in the engine compartment. It's really easy to do on this one. All right, after you get this one off up by the hose, it's the same thing. There's another raw water drain, same exact spot down below here. Pretty easy to get to from underneath. I take that one off right now. My other one did have the O-ring when I got it out. So again, always check for the O-rings. Getting some water off this one. Quite a bit of water on the lower ones. Less on this side than the first side. Got my O-ring still attached. And then, just like the other side, there's your blue hose. There's one on the end. You can just unscrew it. This one's really easy to do. Again, just check to make sure your O-ring. Point that down low so it drains all that water out through your bilge. Okay, at this point you have all 7 drain plugs pulled. If any of these needs a new O-ring, this is a good time to go ahead and replace the O-rings. I have purchased replacement O-rings down at Home Depot. You can find some generic ones that work just perfect. So replace O-rings if you need to, but now that you have all 7 of these out, you're going to turn around and put all 7 of them right back where they were. So go ahead and replace all 7 drain plugs. Now, if you get in a pinch and you accidentally drop one in the engine bay or down into the bilge, or maybe you're just missing an O-ring, you might get lucky. There's a spare plug back here. This is on the port side in the rear. So this is the storage compartment. It's just behind this wall here. You can see I have an extra blue plug there. You can also store the plugs there when we're all done. I don't use this myself, but just want you to know that it's there. Whew, not gonna lie, I'm actually kind of roasting out here. It's pretty sunny right now, but good to get this done when the weather's still decent. Okay, I've got all my drain plugs put back in, right? So sucks, you have to take them all out, let the water drain, put them all back in. So now the engine drains are sealed back up just like they were, but most of the water has drained out of the motor at this point. Now we're gonna move on to the phase where we start using the antifreeze. So I'm gonna go start grabbing all of my antifreeze, get it all up here into the cockpit, get my 5-gallon bucket, my hose, my adapters, all of that stuff so that we can move on to the next phase. For the motor, we're going to be pulling in 6 gallons of this RV antifreeze. So from my bucket, I have pipe going into the bucket. It runs out. I have it connected to this piece of hose, comes around here, and I have it set up right now to use the 1 1/4 inch adapter. Okay, now this adapter is going to hook up to this big hose right here. Okay, you can see it coming up to your raw water intake screen. And so there's a clamp, hose clamp right here that you have to take loose. It is a 5/16 inch. So I'm going to go ahead and take that hose clamp and loosen it up. Okay, and then we'll slide it out of the way. Okay, that should hopefully twist out of my way. There we go. Now, this part's going to take 2 hands. This thing's probably on there pretty tight. It just takes some wiggling back and forth. Take your time. Don't rush it. Don't bust your knuckles on anything. But get this hose off of this fitting. Okay, I got this hose off of that fitting. I can now take my adapter, and I want to go ahead and slide that on. Now, it might be a little bit loose, so I'm going to go ahead and re-clamp it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and clamp it. And this is actually kind of nice that it's slightly loose on this one, because it won't be so hard to get back off of this fitting when you're done. So I'm just going to snug that on, and now I have everything set up to where I can start feeding the antifreeze from the bucket all the way into the main water intake for the motor. We're getting close to getting to the point of bringing the antifreeze in, but I want to walk you through the process. If you are doing this by yourself, things are going to happen very, very quickly. So I want you to be 100% ready. One, I have my hose hooked all the way up to the intake, so I'm ready to start pulling fluid through. Now, I want 6 gallons. This is not a 6-gallon bucket, so I can't put all 6 gallons in. What I'm going to do is start with 4 gallons. So I'm going to go ahead and put 4 gallons in right now. Okay, the audio is probably going to sound a little different. I didn't realize my microphone battery had died, so I'm going to have to voice over the rest. Basically, I've got my 4 gallons in the bucket, and I have 2 extra gallons open and ready to go. I also have a utility knife sitting there so that when I start pouring, I can pierce the bottom of those jugs and they will pour out quicker. My goal is to get those 2 gallons in before the bucket gets empty. And once I start the motor, this thing is going to start pulling fluid through very, very quickly. So you are going to notice that bucket is going to start draining really, really fast. So you got to be totally prepped and ready to do this. Okay? So make sure you have a knife handy. Make sure you got your 2 extra gallons open and ready to go. And just be prepared to act quickly. And then with that, we're about ready here to go ahead and start the motor. Okay, get ready to start the motor here and watch the fluid level in that bucket. As soon as we start it, you can see it already going down really, really fast. So I'm going to start pouring. Pierce the bottom of your jug so it pours out really, really fast. Get ready to put this one down. Grab the next one, start pouring. And again, pierce the bottom so it pours out really, really fast. This is going to pull fluid extremely quick. So you can already see the fluid level's already down to there. Now, I have the bucket tilted so that the pipe is at the lowest point of the bucket. And as soon as it's done, I'm going to go ahead and kill the motor. All right, so it's done now. All of that 6 gallons is already pulled through. The bucket's totally empty, including the 2 extra gallons that we added to the original 4. Okay, we're done with the engine part, and now we're about to start the ballast bags. One thing I've kind of forgot to do that I'm going to do right now is I took the raw water strainer off, and I'm just going to take a little bit of this antifreeze, and I'm just going to fill it. You should always, of course, clean your raw water strainer every year. I'm just going to add some in, and then I'm just going to go ahead and screw that thing back into place, and then we'll move on to the ballast tanks. We'll do those next. Okay, here we are with the ballast tanks. This adapter is not going to be used anymore. That one is the 1 1/4 inch. So I'm going to unscrew the part where it connects to the hose, and I'm going to go ahead and take that thing off. I don't need that anymore for the rest of this project, so I'm going to set that aside. And now I'm going to grab this other adapter. Again, this one is basically adapting the hose to fit a 1 inch inside diameter fitting. So that blue end is what is going to fit on the hoses for my ballast tanks. If we look down inside here, you can see there are 4 hoses that connect down to the bottom of the boat there. There's 3 that are the 1 inch, and then there's one more in the back, that one there, which is the raw water intake. We're not going to touch that one. So the 3 hoses that we need are those 3 1 inch ones. So you have the one on the port, center, and starboard side. So there's the starboard. I'm going to go ahead and start with that one, and then we'll work our way around to these others. And we're going to do these one at a time. We have to start by taking off the hose clamp. So again, I'm going to start on the starboard tank, take that hose clamp off, and then go ahead and wiggle that hose and get it free. Okay, I have that starboard hose pulled off, and I have it shoved onto this fitting. It fit nice and tight on mine, so I'm not even going to bother with the hose clamp. I just simply have it shoved on there. Okay, you might have to reposition your bucket a little bit. Got a little bit of a kink in my hose, so I'll have to keep an eye on that. But I basically now am going to take 2 gallons of the antifreeze and put it in the bucket, and I'm going to repeat this for each tank, but I'm going to do 2 gallons starting with the starboard side. Okay, I have 2 gallons poured into the bucket. Now, you need the battery on in the boat to do this, but you do not need to run the motor. So all I'm going to do is start filling the starboard side ballast tank, right? And so one thing I want to let you know is don't pay attention to the percentage on your screen of how full it is. Just pay attention to the bucket itself, and it should start sucking those 2 gallons on through that hose and into the ballast tank. It's not going to suck through nearly as fast as the motor, but it's still pretty quick. Once it starts going, you can see that level dropping there, and you just want to run that until that bucket is totally empty, and then you can go ahead and turn off the ballast fill. So I'm just waiting for that to get to the bottom. You can hear it when it gets to the end, and then just hit stop fill. Okay, we're now basically on a repeat. So I have disconnected that starboard side hose from my adapter and reattached it where it was and put the hose clamp back on. So that's all back to normal. I've hooked up the center hose now. So now I'm doing the belly tank, and I'm just pouring in another 2 gallons before I start. So that one's all ready to go. As soon as I get 2 gallons in here, I'm going to go over and hit fill on the belly tank until I suck those 2 gallons in, and then I'll stop that fill, and then just repeat one more time for the port side tank. And once you have done all of your tanks, whether you have 3 or more or however many, once you've sucked in a couple gallons into each tank, you can now go ahead and just make sure all of your hoses are reattached how they should be, and you're pretty much done pulling antifreeze into all of these systems. I apologize that the mouth doesn't match the voice here. Again, having to do a voiceover. Okay, we have installed or added 6 gallons of antifreeze to the motor. We've done the ballast tanks, so the antifreeze part is done. Now, you remember those 7 drain plugs. You took them out, then you reinstalled them. This time I want you to go pull them out one more time. So you're going to remove all of them, except this time I want you to grab a Ziploc bag and we're going to put those in a Ziploc bag and throw it up on the dash. So go ahead and go remove all 7 of those drain plugs one last time. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 drain plugs. Put them all in the bag. Toss those up on your dash. You're not going to see those until springtime. All right, we're done with this little part, so I'm going to go ahead and put that cover back there. The last thing we're going to do here, or just about the last thing, is the heater. Now, on this boat, the heater is back here on the port side, so I'm stepping into this storage compartment, and you'll find these 2 red hoses down here low on the engine. This one in the front is the one that needs to come off. So one of those has a 90-degree fitting on it. I'm not going to touch that one, but this red hose in the front, I need to loosen that hose clamp and then carefully wiggle and get that thing off of there. Now do be careful. The part right next to there's like some fuel injectors and stuff like that. Don't break any of that yanking on this. So just be very careful getting that hose removed. When you do remove that hose, you should see some fluid coming out of the motor there, and that's good. Some of that is the antifreeze we already pulled through, so that's a good sign, knowing that the antifreeze also pulled through the heater, or the heater core, heat exchanger, whatever we're calling it, but we do have some antifreeze that pulled through those lines as well, and that's a good thing. Okay, so for this, I'm going to be getting some compressed air, and I'm not getting a ton of compressed air, but about 25, maybe 30 pounds is more than enough. And I'm going to be blowing some air into the red line, and then that should ultimately come out right here where it was connected to the motor. So I made a little adapter for my blower, and we should also see when we put compressed air in, you might get some more fluid coming out of some of the other drains as well. But let's go ahead and grab our little air nozzle adapter for this. Okay, the inside diameter of that hose is 5/8 inch, and this little hose I have clamped on here to my air nozzle is outside diameter of 5/8 inch. So it ends up working just right, where I can take this piece of hose and simply shove it inside there. And it has a pretty nice snug fit. I don't need a hose clamp or anything like that. And all I'm going to do is start pushing some air through, and you can immediately see fluid coming out in the background there. So continue to blow air through there until no more fluid is really coming out. Now, as you're doing this, one thing to note, don't just blast it really hard. Start with little short bursts of air so that you don't spray that stuff all over. You can see where a little bit of it is sprayed out there onto the hose and onto the black part there. Just don't blast it. Just start slow and then ease up. Now, when you're done, you can just put that hose up out of the way. I'm going to leave it disconnected for the whole winter. Just do not forget to reattach that when you put all your drain plugs back in the spring. That would be bad to have that undone, because you would just start pumping fluid right into your bilge. So make sure you hook that back up in the spring. Okay, those 2 panels that we removed early on, I like to take both of those. They do stay off for the winter, so I like to take both of those and just store them over here in the starboard side. Obviously, it doesn't matter which side you put them on, but I like to store them over here on the starboard side. All right, there is one other thing I wanted to show you. Now, I don't know that this is mandatory, but it is something worth mentioning. Just to make sure everything stays completely freeze-free for the winter. It does get pretty cold here in the winter. I have one more thing that I install in my boat. Again, not mandatory, but probably worth at least showing you guys. And so I already have it sitting here in the engine bay. I kind of tuck it under towards the front of the engine bay, and this just stays in during the winter. And this is an engine bay heater. I'll put a link to the description, or in the description to this exact one. And it basically just has a thermostat. I think it's set to about 41 degrees Fahrenheit. It stays tucked up here in the engine compartment, right about there. And if it gets colder than 41 degrees, that thing just turns on and it keeps the engine bay itself from freezing over the winter. So I have the cord shoved through into the port side compartment there, and I just toss that off the back and I plug that in with an extension cord. And again, that stays there all winter. I even keep that thing in during this time of year before I get the winterization done, just as a little bit of a precaution. But with that, we're pretty much done with anything back in the engine bays, so you can button everything up there. Now with all of that done, the last thing that I really need to do is the batteries. Now I used to disconnect the batteries entirely, but I don't anymore. I just simply turn the battery switch off. I really haven't found any difference between just turning off your battery switch versus physically disconnecting the battery cables. So I leave the batteries connected and then I just turn the battery switch off, and that's how I leave it all winter. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the batteries off, and then I'm going to go ahead and get the cover pulled on this thing before it gets pushed back into the boat shed here. All right, that about wraps everything up. I'm not going to say that this is the only way to winterize this boat. This is just the way that I've been winterizing it for the past few years. It's worked really, really well on this boat. I've had zero issues or zero problems of any kind. Again, there's probably other ways to do this. This is just what has been working for me. So I hope you found this helpful. If you have questions or comments, love to hear from you down in the comments section. But yeah, not super hard, just a little bit time consuming. Probably takes a couple hours to get this whole thing done. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.